McGraw in the Morning continues on the Big 550 KTRS.
924 here on the Big 550 KTRS. Every Thursday, we get to check in with Scott Sherman, and we were going to give him his due over the Michigan basketball team being in the Final Four. However, Scott Sherman, for those of you watching on KTRS TV, you now know that he's not wearing your Michigan hoodie.
I cleaned up for you today.
Yes.
I wanted to make sure that it was a professional
We appreciate
and
that.
strictly first-class operation, so I was doing my part to help that.
All right.
But
and,
yes, I'm very excited about this weekend.
And just like Adam Paul, neither one of you get a badge for being on the show.
Oh, good.
All right.
Am I going to get impeached on this show?
Well, you really don't have any standing to be impeached, but that's beside
If
the
I
point.
did, I would be.
If you did, yes, I would impeach you.
Yes.
You are our legal analyst, our legal expert, and not a lot of attention is going. Well, this is a classic in the news media. The story that the prison warden was shot and killed in his front stoop in Colorado, who's from St. Louis,
Tom Clements
was a story.
Yes.
The fact that this guy down in Texas, was killed, is a story.
Mike McClelland.
And the story that
his wife.
this guy in West Virginia was killed is a story.
Eugene Crum.
But there's some growing evidence that these are all kind of linked and that this is a new type of crime that's sort of coming to the forefront.
Yes, I think that there is substantial evidence that there is a connection, and a very serious one, between the Mexican drug cartels that manufacture and distribute most of the illegal substances that come into this country,
Right.
and a affiliated confederacy of white supremacist prison gangs, including but not limited to the largest and most dangerous, the Aryan Brotherhood, and a new local gang, local to Colorado, called the 211 Gang, and other gangs throughout the country who are the distribution points for these illegal narcotics.
We talked to Brad Garrett this morning, who's a former FBI guy, about how the Mexican cartel wants to sort of handle the entire distribution chain.
That's right. And what's happened in the last 7 or 8 years is the war between the Mexican drug cartels. There are a bunch of Mexican drug cartels, but the big three, sort of the Detroit automaker drug cartels, are the Zetas, the Gulf, and the Sinaloa drug cartel, of which the most notorious leader of those is the guy that's sort of the Scarface of the Mexican drug cartels, which is a guy named El Chapo. Now, he's doing some El Chapo. They're all El Chapoing each other, and most of the people that they even think would snitch on them. Here's a number: 86,000 people. 86,000 people have been murdered in the Mexican drug war since 2006. That's more than Vietnam, Americans killed in Vietnam, or any war since combined. That is all about one thing. That is the profits of illicit drugs, 90% of which are coming to this country.
We're talking marijuana.
Yes.
We're talking heroin.
Yep.
We're talking cocaine.
Yep.
We're talking methamphetamine.
That's right. And it started as a marijuana issue, because 2/3 of the profit of the Mexican drug cartels were marijuana related. So our failed war on drugs, mainly a failure because of our inability to realize that marijuana, which has been scheduled since Nixon derived the DEA in the early 1970s as a Schedule I narcotic, saying that it has no recognized medical use, is nonsense, and that the decriminalization of marijuana is late in coming, grew these Mexican drug gangs into cartels more powerful, more dangerous, and more sinister than the Colombians that were doing cocaine in the 80s.
Back a couple of years ago, there was a couple of stories we did on kidnappings going on in Phoenix and in Tucson. But now with these 3 stories coming up recently of these 3 murders, the argument always was, well, they're killing their own competition. So if you're not involved in the drug trade, you have nothing to worry about. But now they're going after law enforcement people.
Yeah, and you're talking about the murder of a DA and his wife in their home. His deputy assistant just 2 months ago, a guy named Mark Hassey down in this Texas town. And not the reason, but the motivation for killing these law enforcement people and prosecutors, law enforcement people, is the federal indictment that came down in October, that was released in November, of this Aryan Brotherhood prison gang 35 people. They were, with the cooperation of this Texas prosecutor, the feds indicted them on racketeering, murder. They have gone, the Mexican drug gangs and their Aryan Brotherhood American, I guess, partners in this crime have gone to the point that they will kill anybody who gets in their way. They don't have a limit. They don't have sort of a barrier. If you compare them to what happened in the 1930s during Prohibition, a lot of the, sort of the outfit or the Capone gang, if you saw with, if anybody watched Boardwalk Empire, they didn't kill innocent people. These folks will kill anyone and will kill law enforcement people. That's where they're completely off the rails.
So the only way to stop this is to somehow legalize it and or to regulate it.
Well, it depends on what you're legalizing. But I think on the marijuana front, that is a lost cause and the science is in. And not only do people want medical marijuana, and in Colorado, recreational marijuana, but the science is clear that marijuana does help people medically and should be taken off of Schedule I, meaning it has no medicinal purpose, and the focus should be on stuff like methamphetamine.
Well, but back to marijuana for a second. When we just learned this from the interview we just did with this movie that's coming up on PBS on Monday, half of the people who are arrested for marijuana are nonviolent offenders. They were caught with a joint, smoking a joint. They weren't trying to sell it to little kids. They were just smoking marijuana, and they got arrested for it. Now, I'm sorry, but why are our tax dollars going to locking these people up? It makes no sense.
It not only does it make no sense, it's counterproductive. Because if you went to a college campus, including the sons and daughters of prominent politicians,
right,
you would probably find marijuana either in their dorm room, in their fraternity or sorority house, or in them. It is ridiculous because it makes crime out of non-crime. It's easy to bust a poor kid with a little bit of pot in his pocket and make a big deal about that than it is to saddle up and figure out that the people inside the prisons, this Aryan Brotherhood gang, are bringing in truckloads of methamphetamine, marijuana, and cocaine. It's easy to arrest a poor kid or a little kid and make a big deal out of him as an example than to fix a real problem.
There's no question, and we got a break. We're gonna come back, talk more about this. That's Scott Sherman talking about these three murders of these three law enforcement officials in three different areas of the town. Many people are saying it's Aryan Nation that's doing their dirty work on the outside, as well as teaming up with the Mexican cartel. We'll talk more about that coming up here in just a moment. Scott Sherman, 9:32 on the Big 550 KT.